Now, when the fire is in its beginning stages or incipient stage, you might be able to fight it with a fire extinguisher, which are strategically placed around campus. But bear in mind that Hampden-Sydney has adopted what they call the flee policy. We do not expect you to fight a fire. We can replace the building, we can replace the contents, but we can't replace you.
There's no lighter fluid or anything.
I hope you notice that a lot of the decorations that are in the room with the tapestries on the ceiling and the posters lining the walls are not allowed here at Hampden-Sydney, and this helps illustrate why it's not allowed. Because the flame spread and the fire load is increased to a point that this room becomes obviously untenable in a very short period of time. The other thing I want you to keep in mind is the other thing to keep in mind is there's a whole wall missing from this room. The smoke and the heat is going to be contained if you've got a four-wall room in a dorm. Then you're going to, 1 minute. We're 1 minute into the fire, gentlemen. And keep in mind, too, when we have fire drills, sometimes it takes 3 minutes for some of y'all to get out of the room. You might not have 3 minutes.
Oh, wow, that's hot.
But these are typical items that you find in the room. There's paper, there's books, there's clothing,
Feels really good.
plastic materials, computers, televisions, printers.
We also put 4 propane tanks in the middle of the room. Look at more.
There were no accelerants used in this room. All of these items, we had a question from the audience, there were no accelerants used in this room. All of these items are typical items that are found in a student's dorm room. Actually, many of them came from a student's dorm room. Last year when students moved out, we collected things that were left behind.
I wonder why the walls aren't hot.
But once again, I just want to point out, this is a dramatization of how fast fire can grow. When you hear fire alarm activation, whether you think it's real or not, you need to exit the building because you don't know when it's real. You might not have time to get out. There was a fire at Seton Hall, a multi-story dorm. I think it was 2001. There had been 2 or 3 alarms earlier that evening. They had one early morning hours. A lot of the students failed to evacuate. 3 students died in that fire, and over 50 were seriously injured. I encourage you to visit our fire safety webpage when you have time. We've got a lot of YouTube clips on there. Items you might find interesting or useful to see.
It probably would just like be brought up by the current. Sounds like I was hoping more to catch on fire.
I wouldn't trust that.
I want to caution you too, while we're still watching the burn here, we've noticed that a lot of the students are clipping lamps onto their bed, which is fine, but you've got to be careful about the bulb coming in contact with your sheets. We've had a couple of fires here started on campus with the where you have the bunk over the desk. C Dorm 205 on Halloween night in I think 2004 caught on fire about 8 o'clock in the evening. The students were not home. What had happened is the sheet had fallen behind the bed on the wall side and came in contact with a lamp that was sitting on the desk, 60-watt bulb. 60-watt bulb is all it was. It ignited the room and burned it up. Those students were not able to move back into that room the rest of the year. And bear in mind that was October. It took the rest of the year to get that room fixed up again. We had another incident in Cushing about 3 years ago. A student came in from class in a hurry, wanted to jump in the shower, took off his t-shirt and tossed it up on his bunk. He had a floor lamp right next to his bunk. And after he left the room, the shirt kind of slid off the bed and onto the top of that floor lamp. That too was a 60-watt bulb. It ignited the t-shirt, the fire alarm system activated. I'm not sure why, but the student ran back into his room before he exited the building. He pulled the t-shirt off of the lamp and threw it onto the floor. That ignited the carpet, but he was able to extinguish the fire before the sprinkler system went off. But these are the kinds of things that you need to be aware of. Cooking appliances, most of them aren't allowed. You can have a microwave, you can't have a hot plate, you can't have a George Foreman grill, you can have a coffee pot. But if a piece of paper, a test you've gotten back, or a box of tissues or whatever comes in contact with that coffee pot heating element at the bottom, that can start a fire. So just be aware of your surroundings, and bear in mind too that we want you gentlemen to be safe, but we also want to look out for our guests that visit Hampden-Sydney on the weekends and so forth. We've got to think about them too.
Destroy the grass, but the next year it was like this big patch of perfect circle where I burned the barrel.
Next year maybe we'll do this at night.
Yeah! Yeah!
I got really excited.
Should do this in a real dog movie.
Burn the dogs.
I don't think that thing's an actual
Oh, they got Oh yeah, no, clean it on my
I wonder if I could get in there and get anything in my...
Gentlemen, we'll just flesh this out a little bit for you. I want you to know the fire department was toned when the fire was set. But this is pretty much typical response time. They've got it's a volunteer fire department. They've got to receive the call. They've got to respond to the firehouse. They've got to suit up. They've got to get their gear, their vehicles. You can hear the sirens now. And that is very good. And they are very responsive. But just keep in mind, the bed is wooden frame. Question from the audience. Basically what we had was a wooden frame bed, a stuffed chair, and a wooden table. The walls are 2x4 frame construction with sheetrock on the inside. It's approximately an 8x8 room, so it's, of course, a little bit smaller than most of the rooms on campus. The walls are not burning on the inside because typically sheetrock is about 85% moisture, and it generally has a 2-hour fire rating. And while we're talking about construction, a lot of people have the misunderstanding that if I live in a cinder block dorm or something that appears to be what you might call a fire resistant or fire retardant type material like cinder block. You know, I don't have anything to worry about. But what we want to emphasize here today is it's not about the construction so much as it is about the contents of the room.
Yeah, I want to do that.
And there's at least 5 or 6 poisonous gases that are released into the atmosphere sometimes when the items are just heated. They don't even have to ignite. And I want to mention this too, that most people who perish in a fire are not burned in the fire. They die from smoke inhalation. They die from breathing poisonous, toxic smoke and gas and fumes. You can die in a fire and the fire was never in your room. Now we're just on the left side of the building and the ceiling is broken through the sheetrock a little bit. And we are getting some flame on the outside. Now these were separate panels that were screwed together. We did not tape the joints, which that would have sealed the room up a little bit better, but just bear in mind, once again, this is a dramatization. Feel the heat?
Yeah.
Woo! In that room again next year. We've got Hampden-Sydney's finest here. Stick with the fire for us.
Yeah, man.
Be a fun guy for
Oh, well. How you doing? You doing alright? I figured I'd see you down here.
Alright, there goes the desk.
You see the flames and everything? Now, you have to join the fire department. You have to join the fire department. You alright?
All right, let's give the Hampden-Sydney Volunteer Fire Department